So, welcome everybody to another episode of Slow Secrets. My name is Julie Spark, and today I have one of my favorite authors, Carl Honore, as a guest. He wrote one of my favorite books, Slow. Welcome, Carl.
Hi, Julie. Great to be with you.
So, just a little bit about how you ended up in my life. So, in 2013, my business partner looks at me and she says, Julie, I have got the name. And at that time, we are building our boutique property on a tiny island between Bali and Lombok. And everything is arriving in a horse cart. She looks at me and she says, it is slow. And I remember having this explosion of dopamine where I was thinking, oh my God, of course, it's slow. Adeng-adeng, plan-plan, which in Indonesian means slowly, slowly, which is the island spirit, that island that I fell in love with. The natural rhythm of that island. By that time, the slow movement is coming up in Europe and is becoming more and more famous, but it actually was founded in 1986, which is just 1 year after I was born. I go on Amazon and I start looking up all the books that talk about slow, and I purchase them all. And from all those books that I was reading, yours is, to this day, it's still the one that just stayed with me and guided me into understanding that slow is not only a name, but it's an entire movement. So to start with the beginning, how did you end up in the slowing down and rethinking your speed of life movement?
Well, I got there because I needed to. I was a very fast person. Every moment of my day was a race against the clock. I was just so rushed all the time. And I knew it was wrong, but I just somehow couldn't stop. And I think that when we get stuck in fast forward, it often takes a shock to the system or some kind of wake up call that makes you realize that you're living way too fast and that this is doing you harm. And for a lot of people, the wake up call takes the form of an illness. You know, the body is the one who says, that's it. I cannot do this speed anymore. And you have a burnout or you have some kind of illness, right? Something
Yeah.
falls sick. And I didn't have that. That's not what happened to me. What happened to me was that I started reading bedtime stories to my son. And I tell you, in those days, I just couldn't slow down. I was so fast that I'd go into his room at the end of the day and I would speed read Snow White. Yeah. So I'd be skipping lines, paragraphs. I became an expert in what I called the multiple page turn technique, which is this thing
Oh my
any
God.
parent will reckon. You try to turn 3-4 pages and hope the child doesn't notice, but the child always notices. They know the stories inside
Yeah.
out. So my son would always say to me, Daddy, why are there only 3 dwarves in the story tonight? What happened to Grumpy? What happened to Grumpy? And this really lamentable state of affairs, it went on for quite a while until I caught myself flirting with buying a book I'd heard I just read about it in a newspaper, a book called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story. So Snow White in 60 seconds. And when I first read that, I thought, hallelujah, that is a great idea. I need that book now from Amazon, drone delivery. But then it was the second reaction. It was like the light bulb over the head moment. And I thought, oh, has it really come to this? Am I really in such a hurry? I'm prepared to fob off my son with a soundbite instead of a story at the end of the day. And it was one of those moments of really searing epiphany. It was like an out of body experience. It was like I could see myself from above looking down. And what I saw there was just ugly. It was unedifying. And I realized that I was racing through my life instead of living it.
Yeah.
And for me, that was enough to push pause and to stop, I didn't reconnect with my inner tortoise overnight, right? But that was the inflection point, and that was where I hit rock bottom, and that's where everything began to change.
Yeah. So slow down, such a simple word, but I think today very, very important in a society that I always found is stuck in instant gratification. And when I listened to your TED talk, which was amazing, by the way, you said that even instant gratification takes too long.
Yeah. I think that's what we've come to now, that we are so obsessed with cramming more and more into less and less time. whenever we think, how do we make something better? Our default setting is to speed it up, right? If we're always trying to do everything faster and faster. And this has reached the state of absurdity. I mean, I'm talking to you now from a seat in London, right? I mean, I live in London, which is a fast city. And that's okay, right? I mean, fast is often good. But 2 blocks away from where I'm sitting right now, there's a gym that offers an evening course in speed yoga, right? For people who want to salute the sun and bend their bodies into the lotus position, but they want to do it in 5 minutes, right? Instead of an hour. And I actually thought speed yoga was the most ludicrous manifestation of our roadrunner culture.
Yeah.
A friend of mine in the United States, he got invited to a drive-through, right? Like a drive-through funeral, right? Like,
Oh my
so
God.
you don't even get out of the car. And when I thought, come on, that can't be true, but it is true. And these drive-through funerals existed before the pandemic. So they are not about social distancing. They're about speed, right? How can we make the funeral faster? So it's very fast, but is it really a funeral? And I would argue, I would argue at some point it's no longer a funeral. You're just ticking
No.
a box.
Yeah, no.
And like I said a moment ago, I'm not against speed, right? I'm not an extremist or a fundamentalist of slowness. I love fast, right? Faster is often better.
Yeah, I
We
agree.
all know that, but not always. And that's really the key to the whole slow revolution, slow with a capital S. It's about doing things at the right speed. So sometimes, sure, you got to be fast, but then other times you shift gear and you shift into a slower gear and you do things more slowly. Musicians have a phrase. They talk about the Tiempo Justo, the correct tempo for each piece of music. And that really gets to the heart of what this slow movement is all about. That you arrive at each moment trying to find the right tempo for you, for that task, for that moment, so that you live it fully. And really, slow is about much more than just fast or slow speed. It's a mindset. It's a chip, right? It's a way of being in the world. So it's about quality over quantity. It's about being present and in the moment. It's about doing one thing at a time. Do you remember when we used to do that? Yeah.
Yes.
Before the curse of multitasking. Ultimately, slow is about doing everything not as fast as possible, but as well as possible, which really, at its core, is an immensely simple idea. But it's a
Absolutely.
wildly powerful one, because once you change the chip and arrive at each moment thinking, how can I do this better by slowing down to the right speed, by bringing a slow spirit to the party? Everything changes, right? Everything gets better, from the way you make love to the way you work, the way you exercise, the way you eat. You supercharge everything you do by slowing down. And that's kind of the delicious paradox, because in a society that places speed and activity and busyness on a pedestal, the truth is that by slowing down and bringing a slow spirit into your life, you do everything better, right? And often you do it faster. You're more efficient, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And I think of that as the delicious paradox of slow, that by slowing down, you get better results, but often you get them faster.
Absolutely. So I also, by nature, I'm not slow. Quite the
Mm.
opposite, actually. It's almost like I put it everywhere so I don't forget. But I think, I mean, it's like a recipe, right? For life. Like, what is your slow secret? Like, what is your daily routine to live a happier life and to get in touch with that inner tortoise?
Well, I mean, the secret is well, I mean, and in a way, I'm going to say it simply, right? It's just slowing down. That's the simple version, yeah. It's to arrive at every moment thinking, how can I live this moment fully,
Yes.
rather than how can I live this moment fast? Yeah.
Really,
So the
almost.
language is very simple, right?
Yes, yes,
It's the moving from the living fast to the living fully.
yes.
That's more
In
difficult,
full
because, as you
consciousness.
say, yeah,
In
it's
full
being
consciousness.
conscious, it's being present, and
Yeah.
it's making the move from fast to full, from fast to slow is difficult, especially
Yes,
for fast people like you and me, right? I'm a natural type A person.
yes,
My
me too.
natural instinct is to go fast.
Me too.
So, it's one thing to have an intellectual change and think, okay, yes, of course, I'll live a better life if I live it slow. The next thing is actually doing it, right? That's
Yes,
the harder part. But you can do it. Anyone can do it, because trust me, if I can do it, anyone can do it, right?
If I can do it, anyone can do it. I have also like a routine in the morning where when I wake up, like my phone stays on airplane mode for at least 2 hours, and I read, I write, and I take this moment for myself. You know, I practice yoga or any type of movement. I go for a walk 4 times a week, and then I get into a flow of working. I do intermittent fasting a lot, so I don't eat before 11 or 12, and those hours of work, like these 2 3 first hours, I am much more efficient.
Yeah.
Really, like I will do in these 2 hours what I used to do in a full day,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
there's that.
I can have
Sorry.
a nap.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
Yeah. No, so I was going to say that's the delicious paradox of slow in action, right?
Yeah.
Because we've persuaded ourselves that to be efficient, productive, creative, to get stuff done, you have to go faster and faster and faster all the time, right? If you slow down, you're a loser. It's even woven into our vernacular. We say lunch is for wimps. The early bird catches the worm. All these phrases that tell you fast, fast, fast. That's the only solution. But actually, the truth is that you need to change gears. Sure, you've got to be fast sometimes, but in order to be fast efficiently, you need to have slow moments like the ones you've described, where you take 2 hours with your phone switched off, or you go for a long walk in
Yes.
nature, or you do some yoga, or you just sometimes sit still and do absolutely nothing and just watch the world go by, right?
Master the art of doing nothing, right?
Exactly. And it is an art. It is an art form.
It's
And
so
once you master it,
important.
you realize that what you're doing there is you're recharging your batteries.
Life
You're giving your
changing.
mind space to wander, to think, to play with ideas. And then when you need to speed up again, you're ready to go. Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
why you have the slow now. And then when you have to go fast, you're more efficient. You get more done. Like you just said there, you get in 2 hours, you're getting all the things done you used to get done in a day when you were supposedly faster. You
Yeah.
weren't faster. That was a myth, right?
Yeah.
It was
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
the illusion of speed.
Absolutely. And then I can have a nap, and in the afternoon I do more like, you know, scatter focus research, like more easygoing activities. Also, when you do what, and it's more efficient. I really like it. So it's almost like we are hurrying through life instead of just living it, right? As you say so well. And we choose like the fast life instead of the good life. But today, I mean, I've seen a huge change in my friends since COVID hit, and they've been forced. The entire
Yeah.
world has kind of been forced to slow down. So I wanted to ask you if you also, in your environment, you've seen also a change, and if you think it will last.
I've seen a huge change, and I think it will last. I think I'll start with the second part of that question. I think it will last because the pandemic has been so long. If the pandemic had forced the world to slow down for 3 weeks or 2 months, I would say, okay, maybe we learned a lesson or two, but I think we'll just go back to what we had before. But we're now a year and a half in. That is enough time for people to have experienced deep, long, and lasting changes in habits, behavior, experience, feeling. And that's enough to change permanently. And I see it, coming back to the first part of your question, I see it everywhere. I see it, partly because of who I am. I hear from people what's happening in the world and so on. So, I see it in social media. I see it in the mainstream media. I see it in my own social circle. So many people have used this time to pause. They've done something that they've never done before, which is they stopped. They actually stopped and began to reflect, because this is a culture that is obsessed with reaction instead of reflection.
Yes.
And we've had a year and a half, many of us doing less. That's a big part of slowing down, is doing less. No FOMO, no fear of missing out, because there was nothing to miss out on. So we had to fall back on our own reservoir of ideas, being, thoughts, play. And we've had a re-encounter with ourselves, right? And I think it's given people a chance to ask the big questions. Who am I? What is my purpose here? What kind of life is the right life for me? How can I make the world a better place? All those questions that get lost when you're stuck in fast forward. Many of us face those questions.
So important questions.
Exactly. And we came up with new answers. So what you're seeing now is many people coming out of the pandemic and saying, you know what? The life I was living before was not the right life for me. I didn't realize it because I was skimming the surface.
I don't want to go back there.
I was living superficially. Exactly. I do not want to rewind to that. I
How
want
did
to
I
jump
survive?
forward to something different. So many people you'll around the world now are saying, I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to move from the city to the country, or the country to the city,
Yeah.
or I'm leaving a relationship which was bad for me. All those big tectonic changes that we avoid because it's easier to sweat the small stuff and to obsess about little things, because that's what fast is. It's superficial, it's trivial. That's what fast life is. Slow takes you deep. It gets you down to the core. You get to the essence of who you are and what your life is about and what really matters, what's important. And that has been what this pandemic workshop, in a way, has been for the world.
Pandemic
It's been
workshop.
a time for people just to say, whoa, look at the big picture here for a moment and ask the big questions. And as soon as you do that, you unlock the door to the right life for you. And so I feel optimistic for a lot of people that they will come out of this on the right path,
Yeah,
because they've had a slow moment.
I agree. I agree. A lot of my friends, when I went home to Europe to visit them, they had started gardens in the back of the garden. They had so much time with their kids, and it just changed them completely for the
Yeah.
better. Like on a personal level, because it wasn't about thinking about what job, what this, what that. It was about surviving, and it was about, yeah, real stuff.
Yeah.
So
And that's what you see now. People are now, I mean, we're being put, the idea is that the pandemic is starting to end and everybody's supposed to go back to normal. Most people are saying no. Like in the workplace, people are saying, I don't want to go back to the office 5 days a week. I want to
no.
work at home.
And why should you? You can work from home. It's much better.
Exactly.
Why should
Yeah.
we sit in traffic all day and then it doesn't make any sense?
And that's why we will not go back to what we had
No.
before. Too many people have tasted the fruit of slow, and they
Yeah.
don't want to give it up. They don't want to go. They don't want to go back to that thin gruel they were eating before.
Yeah.
Awful fake fast food. They want something deeper, richer, more meaningful. Slow
Mm.
is going to give it to them, and people will demand it now because they've experienced it long enough that they don't want to let it go. They don't
Mm.
want to stop seeing their children or never see their partner or never sleep, right? They want to have a life worth living. They want to have a life worthy of the name.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love how you say how we think about time itself. Like for me, islanders and expats on the island, but also Westerners, where it's often time is money. But I think also with this pandemic, this is changing.
I think how we've got a deeply neurotic and unhealthy relationship with time in the Western industrial modern world.
Yeah.
You said that time is money. We think of time as linear. It's flying from A to B. It's always running away from us, right?
Yeah.
Which creates this sense of panic, frenzy. You've got to speed up because time, you're losing it. It's a limited resource. You've got to go faster and faster to use that resource to make the most of that money, which is time.
Yeah.
But a more traditional view of time is cyclical. So it's always flowing in one direction, then it flows back to you, renews itself. It's like being in a pool of water, right? There's always water there. The waves come, the waves go out again. They come back again. The tide is always going in and out. And I think that cyclical view of time creates a kind of calm when it comes to how you live your life, because you think, well, I don't have to rush every moment because another moment is coming. I'm in this moment now. More moments will come. I've got the moments I've already been through. And so time then becomes almost like the air you breathe or the water you're floating in, which is so much more soothing and more human than this industrial, mechanistic Silicon Valley idea of time as this digital resource that's scarce. You got to speed up or you're wasting your time, right? The truth, of course, is that when you speed up and do everything faster, that's the best way to waste your time, right? Because you end up
I
just
agree.
racing through your day instead of living it. You're counting the minutes and the seconds instead of savoring them and living them. And that's where that way you think about time for many people shifts when they move physically to a different place. Like they go from a big city like London to like an island where you are, right? And suddenly the first 1 or 2 days, they hate it, right? They feel restless, they feel panicked, their withdrawal symptoms. It's like a heroin addict being taken off drug. And then they break through and suddenly they enter that different groove, that other way of feeling about time. And they stop looking at their clock. They don't worry about when they're eating. They eat when they're hungry. They sleep when they're tired. They go for a walk when they feel their body saying, I need to move now. And they forget the clock. And that's really, I think, the purest distillation, the most natural and full expression of slow is when you forget the clock. You forget the clock and you are in the moment. And I think that's where somewhere like it's pronounced Gili Air, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I always think it must be Gili Air from
I don't even know what day it is.
yeah. So that's why somewhere like Gili Air is a sort of natural home for slow, because
Yes.
you just forget. You forget the clock and you remember to live, and that's the crucial dance that has to
Yeah.
happen. Just to close off the thought, I think that's an interesting silver lining the pandemic as well, because one thing you heard during the pandemic was people said, I don't know what day it is.
Yes.
Is it Monday? All the time began to just float and seamlessly enter into one big balloon of time.
Yes.
And people found that disconcerting and worrying at first, but then I think they began to find it a kind of release, a relief, right? To be able to say, you know what, it doesn't matter that it's 10:45 now. What matters is that I'm reading a story to my child. What matters is that I'm making love to my partner. What matters is that I'm watching the sunset. That's what matters. It doesn't matter that it's 6:15 or it's 9:30. Those things don't matter. What matters is what you're doing in this moment right now. And the only way to make the most of that moment is to slow down into it and forget the clock, which is where, Gili Air is a pioneer and is a leading force.
Gili Air, the home of slow. I love it. I love it. Oh yes. What is slow lifestyle to you?
Well, it's that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in its simplest form, it's just being in the moment, right? It's doing fewer things and giving everything you do, every moment, your full time, attention, and love. That is what it boils down to in a sense. And once you make that switch and you arrive at each moment with that spirit, game changer, right? Everything just goes from, it's like your life, whether it's your working life, your personal life, your sports, your food, whatever it is going to go from being a jerky black and white film to Technicolor with Dolby surround sound, right? Everything has become alive. It's going to become vivid because you are there. You're in one moment fully instead of multitasking your way through 15 moments at the same time. So that to me is a slow lifestyle. And actually, although, we're talking about Gili Air being a haven of slow, you can be slow anywhere. Like I'm talking to you, as I've said already, from London, which is a city of volcanic energy. I love the energy here, the speed and the dynamism, but I live slow here. Why? Because I don't feel rushed. I never feel rushed. I'm not worried about the time. My life is arranged in a way that I can enjoy everything I do fully. I don't feel overburdened, distracted, overstimulated. And I'm in a big metropolis, right? So you can bring the slow spirit to wherever you are. It's a little easier somewhere like Gili Air than it is in South London, but you can do it in South London. You can do it in Manhattan. You can do it in Tokyo. You can do it in Paris. You can do it anywhere.
Yeah. So I came home to Brussels after living on the island for a couple of years. I traveled the world for 7, fell in love with Gili Air, went home to Brussels to save money to come back and open slow and invest in Gili Air. So I spent 2 years in Brussels telling myself that I wasn't going to let it swallow me back in. And it took me 8 months. After 8 months, I was swallowed. So really, I have to say congratulations, because I live here. So it is much easier, because I went home this summer and I'm doing this 21 days, no complaining challenge, right? But I want to take it to 66. Took me 6 months to do 21 days. Then I went to Brussels for 4 months and I had to stop because I couldn't finish.
There's so many things to complain about in Brussels.
I was complaining all the time. Well, obviously, I'm not meant to be living there anymore. But so I just want to congratulate the people that live in these fast cities, because I think it's definitely easier on an island.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, nature. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the key parts of the arsenal of slow is nature. We know that being in green spaces, we are creatures of the natural world, and being in a green space, we know the science shows very clearly that it reduces stress and shifts us into a kind of slower, more calm mode. It's just good for us physically. And you get, I live in London, which has lots of wonderful parks, so you can be in nature, but it's not the same thing as being on an island like Gili Air, or somewhere where you look around. I mean, I can see you there with the forest in the background, the water bobbing. I mean, that is a gift from the heavens, right? When you're trying to slow down. Of course it is. So it is easier in places like that. But I guess each person at different stages of their life finds different parts of the world are going to work for them. And, at this moment in my life, being in London just fits, right? It's where I want to be. I love going to places that are nature. I do lots of walking in the country and mountains. I love doing that, but I don't at the moment honestly want to live somewhere like that permanently. That's not quite where I am in my life. I'm
It's not for
enjoying.
everybody.
Yeah. And it may be 5 years from now. Who knows? Maybe next year I'll think, you know what? It's time for me to move to Gili Air, right? Or something.
Well,
But
actually,
right now,
my parents moved to the island since the pandemic. Yeah, they're both retired here and they're super happy. They both actually sold their house now and they've been here for a year, both of them. So yeah, it's great. What did I want to ask more? I think for the people that would like to slow down, if you had 3 action points to close.
Sure. The first is do less, right? Look at your schedule for the next week or month. Pick one thing every day, the least important thing, and drop it. Just don't do it, right? We are chronically trying to do way too many things. Most of the things we do are not important. You won't even remember them 6 months from now. So always start every day thinking, how can I do less today? Not how can I do more, right? So do less, drop stuff, cut your agenda. Number 2, you touched on it at the beginning of our conversation, technology, right? Now, I'm not a Luddite. I have an iPhone. These are great. They're great.
Me too. They're fantastic.
They're toys, but turn them off. Yeah. Use the off button. My 2 favorite words these days are airplane mode.
Yes.
My phone is off all the time, right? And I have notifications permanently switched off.
Me too.
So that I never, I decide.
Not even do that.
Yeah. When I'm going to get interrupted and when a message comes in, I never get pinged or anything. So wherever you can do, put up a little barrier, put up a firewall between you and the sound and fury of the web and the grid and the internet.
Wait.
And the third thing would be just to incorporate some kind of slow activity in your life that's there every day. So that's going to depend on the person. It could be knitting, could be reading poetry, it could be yoga, or I like to sketch, sketching, anything that just vaccinates you against the virus of hurry. And take that activity and build it into your schedule every day. It doesn't have to be 4 hours. It could be 10 minutes, right? Just have it in there and it will help inoculate you against all of this rushing fury and frenzy. So those are 3 things. And then I'll throw one bonus in, which I've already touched on, which is nature. Like just get out into nature as much as possible, wherever you can. Get outside, get out of the house, get into a park, go to a forest. It's there, it's free, it's there for everyone. Swim in it, bathe in it. It will slow you down.
Yeah. I would also add, be kind with yourself and just always do your best.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm like, oh, I should really slow down more.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's a good point, actually, is not to turn slowing down into a chore or a punishment or a torture, right? It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be good for you.
Yeah.
So don't beat yourself up, right? If you're trying to go from being a very fast road runner to being a tortoise, it's going to take time. Nobody achieves the inner calm of the Dalai Lama tomorrow morning, right? It's going to take time. Slowing down is slow. And you're going to make mistakes. It's like you talked about it earlier when you went back to Brussels and 8 months later, you'd kind of fall. It's like an alcoholic always has to be you could always, like a drink could be there and you think, oh no, it might be 3 years. And suddenly it's the same if you've been a speedaholic. You always have to be aware that you can fall back off the wagon and back into the old fast ways. And don't beat yourself up if you go too fast sometimes.
It's okay.
Sometimes I go too
We're
fast.
human, right?
Well, nobody's perfect.
Yeah. We do our best.
Yeah. And your best is good enough. Your best is always good enough.
Absolutely. If it makes you happier, do more of that.
That's another way to think about it, definitely. Yeah. And slowing down will make you happier. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. I can't express how flattered I am to have you on our podcast.
I've
Uh,
loved it. I
anything
hope.
you'd like to add?
Um, oh yeah. Well, I'll just stop with. I'll end with a quote, which is a
Oui.
favorite quote of mine, which is from the actress Mae West, who
Mm.
said once, "Anything worth doing is worth doing slowly."
Oh,
And I think
wow.
that's just a nice way to think about everything. Very simple, but very powerful and very
Yes.
joyous. So that would be my final thought. Or an extra final thought was,
Yes.
it's been a thrill chatting with you. We first got in touch many months ago. I
Mhm.
lost my long story, but anyway, we got back in touch now. I'm so glad we had a chance to chat. And I hope that next time we will do it face to face in person,
Yeah.
not in London, but in Gili Air,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. As soon as this pandemic is over,
Here we go. I'm all in.
we are in. Well, thank you all for listening. I wish you all a beautiful day. And I hope we've inspired you to rethink your speed of life. Much love from the island. Bye. Slow secrets.